Have you ever struggled with boundaries with social media? Why are you on these platforms? What's the intention of it? Well, we are very excited to share today's conversation with the director of Word on Fire Institute, Jared Zimmerer, who partnered in collaboration with the University of St. Thomas, Houston, to discuss a masterclass in how we evangelize intentionally using social media and all of the different platforms to truly reach the culture at different touch points. And so we're so excited to share this conversation, all that and more coming up next.
Jared, welcome to the show.
Yeah, great to be with y'all.
Guys, we're super excited today to be able to talk to Jared Zimmerer. He is the director of the Word on Fire Institute, and they just launched kind of a new innovation with the University of St. Thomas, Houston, talking about new evangelization and new media and social media and how do we do this in the day and age that we are today. So, Jared, could you tell us just for our listeners who don't know you a little bit about your background, maybe a little your faith journey and how you got to be the director of the Word on Fire Institute?
Yeah, it's kind of a strange journey for sure. So I'm born and raised here in Texas, in North Texas, and it's funny. As a kid, going straight through high school, my number one kind of focus was always sports. And so I ended up going to the University of North Texas here in Denton, Texas, and got a degree in kinesiology. And while I was in college, I had a pretty major conversion. Particularly, I was raised as a Catholic. My parents actually owned and operated a Catholic bookstore for about 15 years of my childhood. We went to monthly confessions as a family, nightly rosary, almost 4 or 5 times a week. Very, very Catholic. But again, my kind of lowercase g God was sports. And so, unfortunately, a lot of that took a back seat. But during my college years, I had an opportunity to go down to Mexico City with my dad and had a pretty major conversion down there because of the Cristeros War and Blessed Miguel Pro and, of course, Our Lady of Guadalupe. But that kind of put me on another journey. And I tried to figure out kind of where the sports and my faith and all of that start to fit. Around that time, I was more focused on like bodybuilding, powerlifting, martial arts. I was doing boxing and Jeet Kune Do at the time. And at the same time, I also met my now wife. And so she was actually baptized Catholic, but was raised in a non-denominational church. And part of once I proposed, I basically said, I'd like you to be Catholic. And so our time period from the proposal to getting married was actually going through RCIA together. And I was her sponsor, and she actually came into the church on our wedding day. So she actually had her first communion on our wedding day. So it was kind of a cool journey with all of that. But I still was kind of wrestling with, what do I do with this sports thing? And I started to kind of write on my own blog back when blogs were first kind of becoming a thing about how weightlifting and physical discipline and asceticism is a great way to introduce Catholic spirituality, particularly to young athletes. And so I started to speak at high schools. I started to do a little bit of speaking at seminaries as well, and kind of speaking about how to reach young men, especially young athletes. And so kind of what Bishop Barron talks about all the time is find those little touch points in the culture and show how they point to Christ. And so that's what I was trying to do with that, which that became kind of the introduction via social media to Word on Fire. Father Steve Gruno, who is also a weightlifter and a big fan of sports. Of course, Bishop Barron is a big fan of sports as well. And I ended up getting invited up to Mundelein Seminary to give a couple talks to the seminarians there about this kind of realm of physical asceticism, self-discipline, stoicism, other ways in which we can kind of speak to young men and work on this kind of authentic Catholic masculinity via those routes. And so that was the introduction to Word on Fire. And at first, I was just kind of on a volunteer basis. At the time, I was actually the director of adult catechesis at a parish here in Grapevine, Texas. I was there for about 5 years, met them about 3 years in, and then started getting opportunities to travel with Bishop Barron and started to represent the organization at the booth at conferences and stuff like that. But then one time, I actually, back in 2014, I had an opportunity to go to a meeting at the Word on Fire offices with the late Cardinal Francis George. And that was whenever Cardinal George basically challenged Word on Fire and Bishop Barron to say, where is this going kind of in the next 100 years? Like, how can we keep this work moving? And so I was part of that meeting, and we ended up praying through the Acts of the Apostles for about 2 years via just video conference. And we met once a month, just discerning what is the Holy Spirit calling Word on Fire to. And then one day, right around Christmas time of 17, Bishop Barron calls me and said, "I'd like you to start making the moves that Colonel George challenged us to."
It's time.
Yeah. So if you read "To Light a Fire on the Earth," Bishop Barron's book that he did with John Allen Jr., he talks about moving from ministry to movement, and he envisions
Mm,
eventually a Word on Fire order of priests, lay consecrated, centers
wow.
of evangelization all around the world. And so that's the task. So I had to take about 10,000 steps backwards and say, okay, what's that
Yeah.
step number one? Right. And so we did a lot of discerning, and I read through a ton of the kind of successful movements, Benedictines and Carmelites and Opus Dei, numerous others, to kind of figure out how does it work. But we were already an international reality, and so we knew that having like a physical location in one place wasn't really going to work for at least step
Yeah.
one.
Mm,
And so that's what helped us launch the Word on Fire Institute, which is Bishop Barron's formational arm to help teach people and form people in the ethos of Bishop Barron and the ethos of Word on
mm,
Fire. So people who think, Bishop Barron really is able to create these kind of touch points with the culture. How do I do it? So all of
mm,
our courses on theology, philosophy, evangelization, culture, they all point to our principles in some capacity and help people better understand how learning theology is not just learning theology, it's learning to share it, right? And how to make how to make good philosophical arguments, how to just accompany people, how to do that well.
mhm.
So anyway, that's how I ended up as the director of the institute. So I was just a Cowtown kid, meathead. So somehow I ended up
Wow, that is incredible. It's incredible to hear the vision and the plan and how you guys have stepped to that back of, okay, well, this is the long-term goal, but what is the today
Mm,
action point? And I think that that's beautiful because far too often I think we spin our wheels in today's action and not necessarily always having that long-term vision. And so the way that you guys discern that is beautiful and I think effective.
mhm,
From what I have seen, the reality of this project that you're about to launch right now. So, you guys partnered with St. Thomas Houston. What kind of started that? What did
mhm.
that journey look like?
Yeah, well, we've got a couple of friends at the University of St. Thomas that just are acquaintances, and we've been in conversation about a lot of projects. And one that came up with Jeff and the team down there at Max Studios is this idea of something along the lines of new evangelization, the new media. They kind of envision, Word on Fire being a really kind of leading figure in regard to using new media well, really understanding how to use social media well without getting caught up in all of the kind of Catholic Twitter type
Yes.
stuff that can occur. And so we just kind of started thinking these through, but they brought me a proposal and to collaborate with Word on Fire. And so several of the Institute's fellows are interviewed experts. But we see this project as a way to help form people. It's not just something cool to watch and learn, and it's more something of put what you learn in action. Almost
Mhm,
everybody, most people are on some social media channels of some kind.
yeah.
So to form Catholics on how to do it really well, I think
Mhm.
that's a necessity, and it's one of our
Mm,
principles actually is to use the new media well. So we've got courses on new media, courses on social media, et cetera. But to actually hear from people who are successful in regards to reach, so numbers and things like that, but then also what's their game plan? What is it? How is it
mhm,
that they structure their videos? How is it they structure their content? And how in our own little way, in our small circles or our smaller reach within our own social media, how can we do that well? And so it's a cool, just formational opportunity that kind of continues what we envision of people going out into the world, finding those little touch points
mm,
of culture, and hearing it from people who do it well.
Yeah, and so, man, let's jump into that a little bit with social media because I mean, every Catholic that is our age and living in today's society has to deal with this question of social media, and you know, I think there's a lot of us that are skeptical of it in the sense of there are some dangers that can come along with,
It's created to be addictive.
yeah, and but we haven't given up on the culture yet. So the idea of just getting rid of everything, it kind of feels like you're abandoning these people, to the sharks of the culture that is right now. So, talk to us a little bit about what are your thoughts on? Obviously, you guys use social media in at Word on Fire and the Word on Fire Institute in this new initiative, but what are your just kind of 50,000 foot view thoughts on social media and how do we engage in that, but not have it be detrimental to our souls?
Yeah, that's a big question. Yeah, and there's kind of like the philosophical aspect of it, and there's a very practical aspect of it.
Sure.
I think philosophically speaking, it can be it's obviously built to be addictive. And so
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
we're going to participate in something, we really need to understand what it's for and the
Mhm.
limitations of what we can actually do with it. Right.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so one thing that we talk about a lot here is part of the job of an evangelist is to go into social media in order to bring people into reality, right? Because
Yeah.
so often
Mm.
that is our reality. It's social media,
Mhm.
and it's not really
Yeah,
reality.
and it's warped.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's continuing. As we talk about metaverse and all this other
Oh,
stuff that's
yeah.
coming,
Mhm.
it's going to become more and more sort of disembodied, right? And so
Mhm.
Mhm.
part of what we want to challenge evangelists to do is to go into to social media, present a beautiful message of Christ, present a beautiful
Mhm.
message of truth, and then point them where they can get more, right? And that's
Yeah.
typically
Mm.
not within social media. It's actually within
Yeah.
relationships.
Yeah.
It's at
Yep.
mass,
Yep.
it's in front of the tabernacle, things like that. So part of I think the struggle as an evangelist is to always either work with a spiritual director or have a very very good prayer life where you're constantly discerning what is this doing to me personally, because
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
not going to work if you're losing your soul while you're trying to evangelize other people, right? And so
Oh,
if you're
yeah.
feeling yourself constantly, like it drives me nuts when I just do it when I'm at like a grocery line or something. I pull my phone out. I I hate it, and so I try the best I can to just leave my phone in the car. It can wait 30
Yeah.
minutes
Yep.
while I get my groceries, right? But to know maybe it's time for a regular fast, and that's okay.
Mhm.
To take a month off, that's fine. The
Mhm.
world's not going to fall apart,
Yeah.
because you're not on social media. So
Yeah.
I think that working with a spiritual director is very important, or
Mhm.
potentially working with others who are trying to do this kind of thing in social media
Mhm.
and having that kind of familial language where we can talk about this stuff openly of like, hey, I really think I need to exit for a little while and stuff like that. But the difficulty though is the people who are in social media who may never darken the doorstep of a church, that's where you're going to find
Mhm.
it, right? You got to
Mhm.
go into those roads, go into those
Yeah.
touch
Mhm.
points. And so it's kind of like it's a little bit dangerous, but it's not more dangerous than like the martyrs of the Roman
Yeah.
road. It's more of like a mentally dangerous thing, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
A different danger.
Yeah, it's like maybe a deceptive danger because if we
Mhm.
don't go into it knowing that this is a battle and that in many ways we're in enemy territory, um, trying to pull people out. It's also I don't know. It's a funny business model. You're like we're in social media to pull people out of social media, and like sometimes that works well. You're like sometimes
I
that does not.
It's reminding myself that I can put up a story that says, "Hey, have you been on social media too long today?" It's
Yeah.
the reality that I have to go, it's not, and if I need a week off, like, yeah, it's gonna crush the algorithm. But if that's what my soul needs, like the reminder of the importance of that and the just constantly looking at what am I doing this for? Am I doing it to get people more addicted to my account or am I doing it to truly point them to Jesus? And I
Mhm.
think that that reality and myself, like, am I truly living the life that I am proclaiming on
Yeah.
social media? Or am I just addicted to this as well? And so the I absolutely what you said
Mhm.
as far as working with a spiritual director, I think correctly
Mhm.
evaluating and going to confession when we've made likes, follows,
Mhm.
comments our idol, like, and that's our
Yeah.
just affirmation of our worth instead of looking to the Father who
Mhm.
really doesn't care how many likes my posts get. And really evaluating what is the purpose here. And so I do think that this is such an important topic though, because I don't know somebody my age or younger who doesn't have social media accounts. And even if they do take fasts at times,
Mhm.
that is an area that they are spending time on. And so it is someplace that we do need to be. And so thank you
Yeah.
for this initiative. Yeah.
I just thought about this. So when a lot of social media, some of the goodness, but also the trouble of it
Mhm.
is like the beauty that's on there. And I say
Mhm.
beauty in the sense of there is some really good and beautiful things, but there's also it's kind of whitewashed, or that's all that people see. So what are your thoughts?
Mhm.
Because I know at Word on Fire, the Word on Fire Institute, like beauty is something that you guys use very well to try to draw people in, but think, I don't know, maybe the question would be practically for people who are out there trying to evangelize. Like, if all everyone ever sees is beauty, then I think people get a warped sense of reality, and then now they start
A
judging themselves.
disdain of their own
Yes, yeah,
life.
right. It's like, oh, the Taylor family, like they're all so holy and they all just pray, and it's like, come to our
Their
church on
kids are
Sunday. Yeah,
perfect.
like our pew looks like a WWE wrestling match. It's like, so I don't know, thoughts on that, like the balance between beauty and
Truth.
truth. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that goes into the kind of reality aspect of it. And I do think it would be important for evangelists to share some of their struggles as well.
Yeah.
Just like in a normal relationship, whenever you're talking with somebody, I mean, I used to run RCIA all the time, and I would tell them about my faith struggles. It's not,
Mhm.
we can share these things with each other. And I think on social media to be able to share those, I think that's important. But yeah, I think the mentality of comparing ourselves is one of the other dangers of social media. I
Mhm.
have been in powerlifting and numerous other things. I'm not as strong as a lot of the guys I see on social media, and it does kind of go. I go like, oh gosh, I wish I was that strong or whatever. But you know what? They might have other issues in their life,
Yeah.
you know. But I do think back to that point about part of social media is to pull people back into reality.
Mhm.
And so sharing the beauty of a beautiful family, things like that, it does make people want those things. So maybe perhaps you've got
Mhm.
somebody who's discerning, am I called to get married? Am I called to something else? You might even have somebody who isn't a believer who's just trying to figure out life, and they see this
Yeah.
Catholic family that even though on social media they seem like they have everything put together, it's at least an attractive thing of like, I
Mhm.
want whatever
Mhm.
that is.
Yeah.
And so there is still, I think, a kind of first step that beauty allows, which is kind
Mhm.
of like an introduction into something beyond this kind of meaninglessness that is being offered in a lot of the culture. And so it does do that, but I do think a lot of the message needs to be like actually experience this. You got to get into reality. You got to
Yeah.
go to
Mhm.
church and see these families. You got to go to these things. You can't just constantly be in social media thinking you're actually experiencing something. It's just kind of entertainment at that point, right?
True. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, and I do know one person that's our age who doesn't participate in social media at all, and it's my wife. She just never got in, and she's refusing to plug in. So, my job is on social media. Hers, she just
Yeah.
refuses.
Just
I totally respect that.
yeah.
Wasn't until we launched this YouTube channel that we opened Instagram, which
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
very not our age
Yeah.
group.
If we didn't think God was calling us to this, I don't think we'd have any social media. So
Yeah, and that's part of the discernment of an evangelist.
yeah.
We still need
Mhm.
boots on the ground in the real, right? We
Yeah.
still need people who are
Yeah.
creating good communities, reaching out to their neighbors, all that kind of
Mhm.
stuff. And to me, if your social media activity is taking away from doing those kinds of things, you
Mhm.
really ought to discern. You really ought to
Yeah.
discern,
Yeah.
and which goes back to the idea that understand what it is. What are you actually trying to accomplish? Who is
Mhm.
it that you're actually trying to reach?
Mhm.
And then the behavior how you behave online. Not everybody just wants hot takes. Not everybody just wants to see one person against another. Some people just
Yeah.
want to see somebody who has peace in their life,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
that's a very attractive thing. You know.
It's such an important missing element sometimes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah. So, tell us a little bit. So, the partnership with Mac Studios. So, you guys said, okay, we need something. We need to learn these lessons from the people who are out there doing it, and who are evangelizing well in the social media space. So, who are some of the guys or girls that or women, men that got on board for this project, and what can they bring, or be able to teach people like us who feel like they're called to ministry in some type of social media aspect?
Yeah, so a couple of names would be like Leah Darrow, who I mentioned your
Mhm.
crowd might know quite well. Haley Stewart, who is our managing editor of our Spark books. She's also a fellow of the Institute as well. We also have Father Rob Galea, who is an
Mm.
Aussie, and he's a weightlifter and a singer and all kinds of different things. So a lot of those kinds of names. Andrew Petiprin, one of our other fellows here at Popular Culture, who's going to give more of a perspective on the goods and the potential dangers of
Yeah.
social media out there.
Yeah.
And so what people will be able to learn is one, I think it's really important for if anybody wants to do this, they need to understand who their crowd is. Who is it that you're
Mhm.
actually trying to reach? Because all of your content needs to be geared towards that. So each one of these figures know who their people are, and they know what
Mhm.
they're trying
Yes.
to accomplish, right?
Mhm.
And so, but then also you'll hear from them. And another one is Bearded Blevins, who I'm actually kind of excited. He does Twitch, which I
Yeah.
don't know that well. I have kids who play a lot of video games, so I'm glad there's Catholics out there doing that. But it also kind of introduces ideas or innovations, and then also spiritual reality of this is what I do spiritually to make sure that I'm
Mhm.
regularly balanced and always focused in on my prayer life, my relationship with Jesus.
Mhm.
And so it's a good way to kind of see a range of personalities, a range of all of the different outlets that are out there. Because I also think there's a little bit of a danger of I need to be on every single social media
Yeah.
Yeah.
thing possible. Uh, and that's just going to pull so much of your time away. And so it allows you to kind of discern. I actually really like Instagram because it's much more image focused or video focused,
Mhm.
or I really like
Mhm.
Twitter because I can just knock out a 60 character whatever very quickly and do that. Or it could be, you know what, my son loves video games. This Twitch thing is great, and I'm going to have introduce him to this Twitch Bearded Blevins guy.
Yeah.
There's kind of a lot of different things that would be involved in that. I also think this would be a great tool for parishes and families to view
Mhm.
together. So you could actually do
Yeah.
study groups around these and have these
Mhm.
conversations, and maybe even come up with ideas on how a parish might be able to use social media better. There's not a
Yeah.
lot of parishes that are very good at social media, and I think that's needs to change.
Yeah.
And then also within families to actually, my oldest son now is 14, and so I still haven't allowed him to get on social media yet. But before we do, we can have this conversation and show him some of
Mhm.
the material and help him better understand why are you getting on here, what are the limitations, what are the potential dangers, that kind of thing. So it's a way to kind of
Mhm.
form a holistic view of social media.
Mhm.
And maybe a theme that I think we've kind of been weaving into all of this is just the intentionality of it. Because one of the things that I'm worried about or scares me with social media is that you see so many people that are uh, that just get affected by it and then get addicted to it, and they don't have that intentional piece of why am I here? Is this good for my soul? We
What
went,
should my boundaries be with it?
yeah,
How many hours should I be on it a day? Like, and it just the overall big picture.
yeah. I mean, we went out to dinner a couple months ago, and there was maybe a 9-year-old girl who was just doom scrolling TikTok. And I mean, we were there for 40 minutes and she had watched a couple hundred videos on this thing. And it was, I mean, some of it's kind of terrifying. And to think about, we've done a lot of reading, and Katie has a master's in marriage and family counseling and just brain development stuff. And that stuff is
Mhm.
like, that's real. So, but that doesn't mean that we have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. That just means that we have to be intentional about why are we doing these things? Who's our market that we're trying to target in the sense of provide value for and content, and try to draw them into
The
the
truth.
real, the good, the beautiful, the truth. So I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess part of it would be, especially, I mean, just using the example of the 9-year-old. I don't think 9-year-olds need to be on social media myself, especially not TikTok. Because
Yes.
that one's been
Yes.
shown to be the absolute most addictive out of
Mhm.
all of them.
Yeah.
But I do think we need evangelists who are willing to go into that world and reach these
Mhm.
9-year-olds, right?
Yeah.
There needs to
Yeah.
be something along those lines. I also think we need something to help reach these parents and say, you're allowing these
Yeah.
companies to form their minds more than you are, right? And
Yes.
Yes.
that's a big problem. And so I do
Mhm.
think that there's kind of the both and of like, if a
Mm.
mature disciple of Christ desires to go into this world specifically to try to reach
Mhm.
those young people or those who are addicted to these gadgets or apps or whatever, then that's great. but then the other part of it is personally and within our own communities, how do we actually discern what's our limitation? Some people might
Mhm.
watch this stuff and say, you know what, social media is not for me. I'm going to go help my community. Great,
Yeah.
that's
Right.
fine too. We need
Great.
all of it, right?
Yes.
So
We
I
need
think
something to give them when we
yes,
draw them
Yeah,
of
yeah,
social
yeah.
media. So great.
exactly. Exactly. And I also think part of the mindset of an evangelist needs to be these conversations that are happening online, while they're real in one sense, that there is a conversation being had, and oftentimes it can
Mhm.
be a positive experience, a lot of times it can be negative as well, that it can't affect the way we treat our families. It can't
Mm,
affect our own personal life. That this kind of conversation with a person I've never actually met somehow
Mhm.
seeps into my life and makes me more
Mhm.
anxious or angry or whatever, that we have to be very careful with that, which goes back to the spiritual direction thing of like at times maybe
Mhm.
you need to kind of step back. It's sort of the stoic principle of like there are things outside of your control and all you
mhm.
can control are your own actions. So the
Yep.
reactions of people on social media, you might get a bunch of trolls. As an evangelist, it's probably going to happen.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yep.
But be prepared to say, I can't control that. What I can control
Yeah.
is my actions and the content that I
Mhm.
provide.
That makes me think of the serenity prayer.
Mhm.
God
Yeah.
grant me the serenity to like to release those things, to just
Yeah.
surrender and then to accept what I can control. And yes, I can control how much time I spend on there. I can control how I respond to trolls. I can control like my emotional disposition and the boundaries that I set and have the courage to change because I think when we've grown up in this expectation that I have to post so much or I have to present this personality on social media, it actually can take courage to say, I need to change and I
Mm,
need to know the wisdom to know what are those things that I need to set boundaries for and what may be the easiest option with my children may not be what is best for them long term. And similarly, what might be the easiest option for myself, it's easiest to pick up my phone and open an Instagram account than it is to open up a Libby account or
mhm.
which is like a book or read, something that might take some intellectual involvement that actually is going to potentially grow me further, but doesn't feel as instantaneous gift to my brain. And so to acknowledge, where is true growth, and
Mm,
again, where are we pointing people, which I think is a beautiful part of this master's class to hear you say like they're
mm.
going to talk about their spirituality and how they're balancing that and also how they're pointing people to something more which may not be liking everything on their account.
Yeah.
Um, and again, having that humility.
Is there anything else that,
Yeah.
about the project that you guys have or anything that you're excited about as it launches?
Yeah, I think part of it is just a continued conversation about social media. I mean,
Mhm.
one of my friends, Arthur Brooks, he calls it a culture of contempt. That we're much
Mm,
more ready to attack people than affirm.
Mm,
yeah.
And you don't have to affirm things that are immoral or whatever, but you do have to affirm the person, right? And so
mhm,
there's this kind of constant problem of attaching people with their ideas, but the
Yeah.
person
mm,
Mm,
deserves to be loved, even though their ideas can be debated. And so
mhm.
Arthur Brooks
mm,
calls that a culture of contempt because we're only looking at the person for their ideas, and I disagree with their ideas,
mm.
therefore I don't like the person. That's a big
Yeah.
problem. And I think that what this continues is we've now had social media as a tool for how long in the modern world. I think the conversation about whether or not we go in or out is consistently important, especially for evangelists. But then
Mhm.
also, I think it's really, really important for people to better understand what and how you say things on social media reflects directly to the Catholic Church if you're representing yourself as a Catholic.
Yeah. Yep.
And
Yes.
so Bishop Barron, Bishop Barron always says that if you don't know the old books, you're not going to be good on new media. And I think that's dead
Mm,
right because you're not going to be able to say what are you going to say if you're
Yeah.
just kind of
yeah.
hot taking off of the top of your head. It's not a good look. It's just not. And
Mhm,
if you actually have this kind of robust philosophical theological
mm,
reading or formation of some kind, and you don't have to. I master's, PhD, everything. You don't have to do that. You can read. You can just
Mhm.
read and challenge yourself to try something new and pick something up.
mhm,
And take what you learn in there and apply it via social media. So I just think that a continuing conversation about this, especially as we get closer to this meta
mhm.
thing,
Yeah.
it's pretty important.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Something you said, I think I've been thinking about, but haven't been able to really solidify it in the sense of on social media, people become their ideas because that's all you have to look at. I think when you are in the real world with relationships with people, you might be able to disagree with them, but at the same time, you can still have them over and feed them and provide for their physical needs and go play sports or other things. But on social media, all we have is the ideas that we share, and therefore people become ideas, and therefore, yeah, there's that contempt. There's this uh, yeah, I don't know.
Division.
Yeah, the division,
Yeah,
right?
there
And
is.
and
You
uh,
versus me.
yep,
Yeah, and
and
it pulls into your personal life a lot of times because if you
yeah,
disagree politically with somebody, and sadly too, a lot of times what happens is everything becomes
Yeah.
politics through
Mhm.
social media. So whether or not you agree with Republicans or Democrats or whatever, you might be with your neighbor who happens to be on the opposite side, and now you never want to talk to them again because of something
yep,
that happened on social
Mhm.
media. Not a good thing. We can
Yeah.
get beyond the ideas and just love the person.
mhm,
It's okay.
Mhm.
yeah,
The idea of, we love humanity, but, to actually love the human that is in front of us
mm,
in all of their flaws and all of their strengths and all of their ups, downs, back and forth, and how do we love them well? And in that, I think it's the same conversation of social media of like, okay, well, is this bringing me joy and not anxiety? And sometimes when we are in that relationship and following that account, learning that we need boundaries,
mm,
learning that, okay, if these ideas are hard for me, how do I love them? How do I pray for them? How do I, support them in the big picture without letting my own soul get sucked into
Mhm.
this?
mm,
And it's not a cutoff forever. I never want to talk to you again, but it is learning appropriate boundaries so that I'm not emotionally spinning up every single time that I see them post or see
mhm,
them message me or see, that reality, which in a society that's very pleasing and very instantaneous, like you post something, you send me a text message, you send me an email, I immediately have to respond or I
yeah,
failed. Learning, okay, where and how do I respond to this? Where and how do I put in a boundary here,
mhm,
in a world that can constantly reach into your life?
yeah,
Um, in a physical way, you would have to come and knock on my door and we would have to have a full conversation. But in the digital space, you can reach into my life with one snide comment and it's like, whoa, what just happened? And this reality that we have to learn then, how do I full respond to the full person,
mhm,
not just that one comment, not just the one offhanded remark that came out of left field because you were there cleaning your dishes and go, okay, how do I evangelize to you and love you? Um, even when maybe this did hurt, maybe this was from a place of contempt, maybe this was from a place of division. And to do that better, I think that is such an important conversation. So thank you for continuing that. Thank
mhm,
you for
Yeah.
bringing that to the light. And then the second element of just walking us through this process. I'm just grateful for the Word on Fire Institute, for the Word on Fire media that you guys are providing. Is there now? How can people watch the
mhm,
specific
yeah,
master's class? We want to make sure that that's
Yeah,
clear.
so it hasn't quite launched yet. So there'll be
Mhm.
some site information coming. But for now, go to ustmaxstudios.com and you can learn more about Max Studios. And they update a lot of their social media on some of the filming they're doing right now. But it'll be coming out in the next couple months. We'll be doing kind of regular releases of new episodes along the way. So for now, go there. Or if you want to find more about the Word on Fire Institute, it's just wordonfire.institute. You can find out what
mhm.
we're doing over here as well.
So speaking of Bishop Barron's vision and the Word on Fire Institute, what are some things that you guys have maybe a little bit on the horizon, those next couple steps that you're excited about?
Yeah, well, some of them I can't share, but some of them I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we do have some pretty exciting. Now that COVID is allowing more in person stuff, we just
Mhm.
recently had our first in person conference back in October. That was out in Florida, and we've got a conference coming up in January here in Dallas that we're doing. We're going to the UK later this year. We're going to have some institute events there as well. And so I'm really excited about the in person stuff because COVID kind of made everybody go online, and
Yeah.
I love in person ministry and I love talking to people. in person.
Mhm.
So I'm really excited about that. We've also got some other stuff coming up with, we've got some collaboration in an academic aspect as well. So we've got some in-person colloquiums and things like that. But then also our Joe Zambone, who's our fellow of communities, we're hoping at least within the next probably 8 months to a year to start gathering people in homes and start having them pray
Mm.
together, start doing authentic discipleship together via the Word on Fire ethos and our Bible. So using our Bible to
Mhm.
discern what kind of mission they're called on and where God is calling them to evangelize. So I guess if I wrapped it all up, it's more in-person stuff as much as
Good.
possible.
Ah,
Which is great. I mean, and we even talked about using social media intentionally to draw people into a relationship. And I think looking forward, that's going to be one of the biggest things that the Catholic Church can provide to
mhm.
society, to our community, is connection, is in-person relationship, because you're not going to find authentic relationship on social media. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, just
And even just more jobs going online, more people working from home,
mhm,
more, and so as your circle almost closes and all you have is this online reality, it will be a very important aspect to be able to draw people back to people,
Yeah.
and into relationship,
And
and so
that's
that's
what we want
super
to.
exciting.
Yeah, and that's what we want these communities to be, is very relational, kind of incarnational
Mhm.
experiences for people that we're reaching them via social media and they say, hey, in this area, you've got a
yeah,
community over here waiting for you.
that's cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
Ah,
And that would be great too, especially, so many young adults are mobile and move places and jobs. And it would be great to just tap in and say, like, oh, we just moved to this place. Like, there's already something set up. And to be able to join that, I think would be
mhm.
really
Yeah.
cool.
It'd be a great
Yeah.
gift.
So, well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming on the show. This is, man, that's been really good. I hope our listeners get some ideas from just being intentional about social media, and then I
Mhm.
hope they check out the UST Max website and this initiative, the new evangelization and the new media. We'll leave links to all of that in the description below. And for our listeners, just know that we are praying for you all until next time. Thank you very much for joining us, and God bless.